Good evening. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Inspiration webinar. Inspiration Software is the embroidery software line of G7 Solutions and Designs and Machine Embroidery magazine. Our Inspiration Software line includes My Block Piecer, My Quilt Embellisher, My Quilt Planner, Perfect Embroidery Pro, Perfect Stitch Viewer, and Word Art and Stitches. Tonight's webinar features our Perfect Embroidery Pro, Lazy Days of Summer Shortcuts. We have a wonderful team assisting us tonight, Inspiration Tech Support Team of Nancy R., Dori N., and Chris L. And I would like to introduce you to our very own double knockout rose, Katherine Artines. Again, thank you for joining us and enjoy the webinar.
Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and start in Perfect Embroidery Pro. In our last webinar, we were working with the apple and adding shading when there was a question asking, is there a way to fade out the apple so we could see it and yet add our manual stitches easily? That night, Cindy brought up the ability to create an outline, which was a great answer, but I ended the webinar still curious if there was an additional way to do that. And in the comments from the webinar, Vicki used the term ghosting in her suggestion. Now, we don't actually have a feature with that name, but it led me to find this, and it becomes our first shortcut. With our apple, we want to fade the red. So we're going to come over here and click on the eyeball for the red, which fades the apple. That's what we did last month. But if I do a right click anywhere in the sequence view area, we come up here and we find the answer to what was asked last month, fade hidden. I'll go ahead and click on that. You don't see it quite as well. Let me come down here and change the background color of my screen so that you can see it better. And this is actually what has happened. Because we have the fade hidden checked, it's going to do that for any portion of this apple in this particular design that we have hidden. And again, down here with our apple, it is hidden. So that's one of our first shortcuts to use, and it takes answers a good question that was last month. So please know that when you ask us questions, we don't start or stop thinking of them anyway. I'm going to go ahead and put my background back to white. I think it's a little easier for you to see. We're going to play in the apple just a bit more for some of our other shortcuts. I'm going to come over here to Sequence View and select all three of these colors, which are the shading that we put in last month, and delete those, and we'll start fresh with just our apple. And at this point, I'm going to come up to our symbols, use my down arrow, use select. Right here, you see the apple that's actually on the screen, but we'll scroll down and pick up our friend the worm. These are in alphabetical order, so he's at the bottom of the list. I'll double click, scroll down just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing, and I'll click and drag and put our little guy in there at our apple. I'll zoom out just a bit, maybe a little bit more here. Now here's another shortcut. I just went to 200, and if I go to 100, that's too small. Did you know that you can actually come up into that percentage and type in your own number of zoom, hit your enter, and you can control the amount of the zoom. So if 200 is not enough and 100 is too much, then you can type in a number somewhere in between there. All right, we'll come back over here and, oops, I'm sorry, didn't mean to do that. I'm going to collapse that. And the next thing I'd like to do is add an apple core to this red apple as if we sliced it in half and could see the core. We'll come up here to our artwork tools, use our drop-down arrow, and you'll notice that we have a star, a round, and a heart. These three artwork shapes were added in our last update. Lots of fun stuff in that update, and here's three of them. Star is self-explanatory. The round is actually creating a rectangle that has rounded corners, something you all asked for, so it was delivered. We're going to use the heart, and I'll click and drag the size of the heart selected, right-click, convert to complex fill, come over here, and I'm going to right-click on the gold to change that color, drag it over and drop it where I'd like it to be on the apple, and you can see that we have an issue. Because of the way that I created this, our red apple first, our worm, and then our core, we can see that it's out of sequence and our core is covering up our worm. There's a couple of different ways you can address this situation, but I want to show you one of the other shortcuts that you might not be familiar with. So I'll drag my core over here, just hit my delete key off the keyboard, and this is what we want to do instead. I'm going to come over here to Sequence View and select the red apple because I really want the core to be after the red apple. Anywhere here in our sequence view, we'll do a right click and we come to this tool called Digitize Path. I'm going to choose after because I want the core to be after the selected red apple. Go back through that process of drop-down arrow for my artwork, choose heart, click and drag, a nice size heart. I'm going to get my select button, select the heart, right click, convert to complex fill. We just did that. Come back again and right click on my yellow to change the color. I'll drag that core in there and right away we now see that we changed the sequencing. Think what we did. We selected the red apple, right clicked, and asked to digitize after. Whatever we created next was placed after the red apple. So that's a very handy tool, a handy shortcut for you to use. All right, I want to do a couple things with this core. Oops, not yet. I'm going to drag my core yellow. So I think I'll come over here and select it out of sequence view, make sure I get what I want to play with. Now I'll come over to the shape tool, click on that, and I'm going to play just a little bit with these 2 points, just to click and drag them out of the way. Select those 3, right-click, and do a smooth. And I'll come over here and apply that. Select it, drag it over. It looks a little bit more now like a core of an apple. Size it just a little bit, and I'm going to use the rotate button to rotate, sort of eyeball that where I want that core to be. So that looks good. That's the order that I want it to be in. And the last thing we're going to do is add seeds to this apple core. We'll come up here to our Run tool. I'll select it, and when I click and move my mouse over, I'm not dragging, the mouse key is not down, I'm simply moving to set my second point. I am watching the length of that run stitch, and it's about 0.43, and I know, having played with the seeds for a little while here in the last week, that I want it to be just about a 4.0, 4.1, somewhere in there, actually a 0.41. I'll right-click into the run stitch. I will select it. We'll come over here to our properties, and I'm going to use the drop-down and choose motif. Now that might seem odd, but bear with me here. We'll use our drop-down to go get the pattern. And as we scroll down, once again, we see some really cool things that have been added in that last update. We have 7 types of bean stitch, and we were given 3 candle wicking. I'm going to choose candle wicking number 2. Again, having played with this, I know that the pattern size I want is a 5. I'll go ahead and apply it, and look what I'm given, just 2 candle wicking knots, which is what I want for my seeds. We're going to end up with 6 seeds, or 3 groups of 2. I could have you come use your copy key, which we use all the time, but since tonight is about shortcuts and hidden things and maybe things that you don't use very often, we're going to use the duplicate key. So we'll go ahead and click on that, and with that seeds selected before I chose duplicate, all I need to do now is move my mouse somewhere below the first ones where I think I want them, and I'm going to move down again and do another set, and I'll right-click to end that duplicate. Couple of shortcuts here. We're going to select all of them. The first thing I want to do is to align them vertically, but we choose the horizontal center align. If the words are confusing to you on some of these buttons, not a problem at all. Just take a look at the pictures. We're very visual people, we sew. So here we know that we want all of those aligned, what looks to be vertically. That just happened. And here's another shortcut. Because I have more than one item selected, we have 3 items selected, I'm going to do a right-click within, and I am given this option right here, Distribute. You don't see it if you only have 2 things selected, but here we have Distribute, and I'm going to choose Vertical. And did you notice that the middle one went down a little bit? What Distribute does vertically is gives me even spacing above and below the middle. It's based on the top highest one and the bottom lowest one, and it sizes those in between. All right, I'm going to want to put these over here in the core. There is one thing though, my core was rotated, and here's another something that you might not have been aware is available to us. I want to direct your attention down here to this gray bar at the bottom. Okay, it's called the status bar, and right now it has nothing on it. If I rest on any of the colors on my thread bar, you can see that it gives me information about a color. But I want you to pay attention when I ask you to look down here, because it'll only show up when I have the mouse activated as far as a drag situation, so I can't show you down there and do what I need to do at the same time. So to start this, we're going to come over here and use our ruler tool. I'll select it. You might already be familiar with this. I'll start at the point of the core, which is the heart, and I'm going to drag down to the middle of the core. And what I'm looking for, yes, you can see that it shows me the distance. It's about 1.3 distance. That's not what I'm interested in here. Please look at that status bar. Again, I can't let go of my mouse. You'll see the distance at 129, the width at 0.27, height at 1.26. But look at the angle. Let me put it back where it belongs here. If I put that angle at that point, I'm just about at an 80 degrees. So that tells me the slant of the core. Now, when I have my seeds selected and I come over here to Properties, Transform, I'm going to come into Rotate. Now don't worry here, a little bit of math. Those seeds are straight up. That's a 90 degree. I just did the drag of the ruler that showed me the core was at 80. If I subtract 80 from the 90 straight up, I'm going to put in that 10 degrees and apply it, and you see exactly that it gives me the angle that this core is. So those seeds fit perfectly in there. Now there's something else I need to do. We have a little bit of sequence. Those seeds are before my worm. So a couple things that we can do. First of all, I'm going to right-click and ask to collapse all. And then I want to find my seeds. And here they're going to be in the black. I'll select the run. That's part of the worm. I see those grouped. And here's 1, 2, and 3. And I can take those 3. One of the ways that we can move something up is to click on that and drag it and drop it. In this case, I'm putting it on the core because I wanted the seeds to stitch after the core before my worm. I actually could take that little guy and move him down just a hair so they don't touch. Could have done that as well. But a couple of things going on there with shortcuts. Now, the last thing that I would do with this apple, if everything is the way I want it to be, positioned and sequenced and so forth, I'm going to select the yellow core, right-click, and ask to remove overlap. And let me show you what's happened. That has removed all of those stitches behind the yellow. I'll put that back And you can see now that this apple would be ready to save and go stitch. All right, a couple things here. I want to stop for a minute. I've used the right click a number of times. I'll often hear that I never know when to left click or right click. It could be because no one has ever explained to you the reason behind your choices. 90% of everything you do in software will be with a normal click, a normal left click. Not just in Perfect Embroidery Pro, but in any software that you use. Because it is the key most used, I will just say click on, and you know I'm using the left key. I'm not going to differentiate between those keys. The right mouse button is only used to bring up what's called a shortcut menu. If I have something selected and I right-click on it, this is the shortcut menu, all of the things available for you to do to this particular item. Now, those shortcut menus show up everywhere. If we come over here and right-click in our sequence view, we get a different shortcut menu. Some of the options are the same, the basic ones with cut, copy, paste, but the others are different. If I come down here and right-click on my threads, I get a different item. The color has changed to that yellow. So it depends where you are right-clicking what shortcut menu you do see. But again, it's a list of actions that could be applied to the selected object or available for the selected area. That is the only time you use a right mouse click, to see choices of actions. The majority of those actions can be found on a menu somewhere. We know that cut, copy, paste can be found under edit or on our toolbar. Convert to and so forth, a lot of these are found under edit. Because it isn't used as frequently, I will always indicate to you right-click if you need to do that. So let that be easier for you. It's not something that you have to think about. I will tell you when to right-click, and if I don't say right-click, you know that you're just doing a normal click. So in itself, the right-click is a shortcut, which is what tonight is all about. Okay. We're going to do one other thing, and I have a design up that is poorly sequenced, and I've done this on purpose for us to see that in addition to dragging, sequencing, and doing our right-click Digitize Path, you have the ability to do a manual sequence where you are in control of the build. First thing I'm going to do is find my double bar here, and I'm going to drag this bar up so that I can see all of the options or the elements in my sequence view. And when I do a manual sequence, I always start with the item that I know should be stitched first. And in this case, the green is on top of the other things. I don't want to see that run stitch or the underlay. So the green is going to be stitched first. I select it, and then I come up here to my choice that says Move to Front. So I'll go ahead and click that. Now again, you have other ways to do this, but I'm showing you how I do a manual sequencing. He is at the bottom of the list, and at the moment, he's going to be stitched last. But what I'm doing is I'm going to send everything to the bottom, and it will then build from the bottom up, and when we're finished, it will be in the proper sequencing order. So the green stem is first, the red part of the apple is next, so again I'm going to come up here and move to front. I then want to find my yellow core, come up here, move to front, and you can see now over here what's happening. I'm going to find my seeds, and you can see that they are split. One in the top position, the other one is lower. I'm going to select both of them and come up to my move to front, and then the only thing left is our worm, and he is grouped, which is fine, so I'll send him move to front. And now you see how we did the manual sequencing. I started with what I know should be stitched in the proper order and moved through all of those pieces, and here is my apple as it should be. Remember, if you do manual sequencing, you are controlling the build. All right, there were a number of shortcuts used. We played with Fade Hidden, Digitize Path, Distribute, using the angled on the status bar, removing overlaps, different ways to resequence. Dory will stop there and ask if there's any questions that have come in so far.
Yes, we do. We have one is from our friend Veronica, and she would like to know if the seeds have to be grouped. I noticed that the worm was grouped.
The worm is grouped because when you bring in anything from the symbols, and I'll bring in our apple again, if I click and drag that apple a second time and select it, you can see over here in sequence view that he's grouped. So when we brought in the worm and did a click and drag to size him, he is grouped and I left him grouped. But knowing that we were going to play around with this apple, with both of them, beforehand, I had ungrouped those two pieces, the apple, the green and the red. Now, as far as the black, if I drag those, I didn't want to do that. Let me come up here and select them from sequence view, and I drag them over. You ask me, do they have to be grouped? But let me draw your attention to up here. Do you see how the group button is available? That is showing you that these items are not grouped. They simply are together in the same color group. So when I chose those two seeds, when one was high and one was sort of buried in the middle, and I sent them to the bottom, they didn't group the seeds, but rather they just put them in one unit under the same color. This is the trick, how you know if something is grouped. If I have a large item selected, look up here to these two buttons because, again, this is available to me, which means they're not grouped. If I click on that, now they are grouped, and if I click on any one now, it's going to select all of them. Take a look. The group button is faded out because it's not available to me. They are already grouped. The only thing that is available to me is the ungroup. If that makes sense, that's a logical visual aid right there.
Super, thank you.
All right. Also, everyone, you know these live webinars are not about me. They are really about you. So I'm going to invite you to play along tonight. We're playing with shortcuts. So if you have any shortcuts that you love and you would like to share, please do so tonight through your chat box on the webinar portion of your screen. Or you can send them to inspiredbydime@gmail.com, and Dory will make sure that all of us in the Perfect Embroidery Pro community get to see them and benefit. Because truly, this is a sharing community. We all learn from each other. We all have different things to share. So if you want to be a part of that, you can either do it right here on your webinar screen or send them to Dory. All right, we'll go ahead. Next up, there are two really cool shortcuts using text. So we'll come back into Perfect Embroidery Pro, bring up a clean screen, and we're going to pretend that we have a bowling team. And this really could be any team, maybe your kids' soccer or tennis team or whatever it might be. Maybe you have an embroidery club, something that you have a group of members where you keep going back and perhaps embroidering their names. We're going to pretend that with our bowling team, anytime we get a new member, we go ahead and embroider their name on a t-shirt. So we're going to start first. You see that I have chosen the text tool, come over to my screen and clicked. We need to start with the text. I'm going to come over here in my text box in Properties, and I'm going to type the name of my first member. Then, I need to adjust my screen here from pulling that up a bit. Then I'm going to go into my fonts, and choose the font that I want. Scrolling all the way down to the bottom, we have these applique fonts that are built in. I'm going to choose Senna Applique, so I'll double-click it, and it automatically brings us into our screen. I'm going to back it out here so it's not so much in your face. And there's the look of the applique with the idea that we usually can find some very fun bowling fabric, something like that to be our fabric for our applique. We have our font chosen, and we're also going to set any of the other properties that we'd like to. I'm going to set the height at 1.75 and apply that. And then I'm going to come back to the second property, which is applique. The fact that I have chosen an applique font means that I'm going to get the properties for applique. Something that I do all the time with all of my appliques is to change the color. I'll apply that. That's not something you see a change that happens here, but what it does is it makes the placement line and a tack-down line different colors of thread. So you'll get a stop on your embroidery machine. I'm also going to come up here and make the applique width a 3, and I'm also going to make the stitch length a 3 to make sure that that's stitched down nice and tight. I'll go ahead and apply those. And then the final thing, we'll come back into our original text properties. I'm going to come over here and change it to orange. Orange is one of our team colors, we'll pretend. So here we have our first name. The trick here, we've set all of these things in motion about this first applique for our bowling team. We want to come over and right here next to or in front of the button that says apply, you notice an ellipse button. It has no text to tell us what it is. It has no pop-up to tell us what it represents, but it's a very cool tool. So when we click on that, we are brought into what's called text style. We can take all of these properties of this name and create a style so that in the future, any of our new bowling team members, all I have to do is use the same style and all of these properties are in place. To do that, I'm going to, notice that I have Paul selected, I'm going to save. It wants a name. I'm going to call it bowling shirt and OK it, and it goes in alphabetical order. I don't need to apply it because it's already applied to this first name, but I'll go ahead and do a close. Now, if I were actually doing this, here's Paul's name. I might then do a File, Save As. Notice that I already have a folder called Bowling Shirts, and I would call this design Paul and go ahead and save it in my C2S. If I had, let's say I had 2 members to do at this point, since this is already up on my screen, I'm simply going to come up here and type in my second member, apply it, knowing that all of those properties and so forth are still there, and I would do a File, Save As, because I don't want to call Paul, I want it called Bill, my second file. And if I had others, I would continue to do my first batch of people right here on this screen. But the beauty comes when days have passed. Actually, I'm going to go in there and do something so that you can see. Okay, that doesn't make sense, but I wanted to change the font. So that days pass, months pass, and I now have a bowling member that's new that needs a t-shirt. All I need to do is click on the text box, click on my screen. I'm going to type in my new member's name, come over here to the style, use my ellipse, come to bowling shirt and apply, and actually I didn't need to type in my name first. I'm going to type in my name and apply it, and you can see that all of the properties, all of the looks that were in my original name are now applied to anything because I have come over here to my ellipse for my text style and I've chosen the style. Everything that's in that style is applied to my new name. Very, very cool, and a big time saver if you do these kinds of things. All right, along with this, another tool that has to do with text will bring up a clean screen. Once again, I'm going to click on the text tool and come to the screen and click. Let's back this out a bit so we can see where we're going. And this feature is called name drops. And it came to us not in the last upgrade, but the previous one. And this new feature allows us to create a list of names all at one time, and then have Perfect Embroidery Pro create an embroidery file for each one with only one click. We have our letter up on the screen. We're going to create our list of names for our garden club members. It's July, and that sounds appropriate. So I'm going to come up here and type in my first member, go through all the procedures that I'd like to do to set the look of this. I'm going to come up here to one of my favorite fonts I use all the time, Bauhaus. I like the look of that. I'm also going to change the height of that, so I'll come into the transform and type in a 0.85. I come back to the original property screen. I want to also set the align at left. I want to also use my initial percent. This might be a box you don't use often. We have covered it before, but just as a refresher, if I type in 150 and apply, it is going to only change the initial, the first letter in my name. So you can see that the N is larger than the rest of the text. And one other thing that I'm going to do is change the density to a 0.4 and put it to a pretty color. Come down here to the teal, right click on teal, and there's my first member's name just the way I'd like it. Okay, and I think I'll go ahead and center it on my screen. Back us back out a little bit so you can see it. So here's our first name exactly as I'd like it to be stitched. All right, our new tool, we come up here under Tools, and we come to Name Drops. I'll click on that, brought into a dialog box where I can type in the other members in my garden club, which I will do. And I'm simply hitting the enter after my member's name. Okay, so I could continue the list. Each list can hold up to 100 names in one file. That means that if you have 300 members, you're going to have 3 different files. You'll need to name those, whatever makes sense to you. If you divide it into north, south, east, west, or you do July, August, September, October, whatever makes sense to you to divide those, because 100 is our limit. All right, let's take a look at what we have. Over here in our preview, we have Nancy, and we see a green box. That green box is representing the original size of our first name. Remember, there's Nancy. So that green box is indicating the size. If I come and click on my second member and come down here to preview, I can see Chris. And Chris, obviously, her name's shorter, so she doesn't take up that whole area that Nancy did. The same with Dory. If we preview, we can see that hers is shorter. But if I click on my own, and my name is much larger, longer, more characters than Nancy's original, you see that it shows me the green box, the size of Nancy, but my name extends. Now, this is something you need to decide. If it is important that all of the names are of a certain width, then there's an option we can do. If it does not matter that you're doing all these names on individual items, for example, if I were putting this on a t-shirt in the center, it would not matter that this doesn't fit. But let's say in our first application, we're going to embroider these names above a pocket on our denim shirt that's our our garden club shirt. All right, that pocket is 3 inches wide. So I know that I want each of these names to fit within a, let's say, a 2.75 measurement. Come over here to the fit width method. By default it sets to none. I'm going to come down here and ask it to scale. When I do that, do you see that the maximum text width becomes available to me? I'm going to type in that 2.75 if our pocket's 3 inches, and I'll go ahead and preview, and you can see what's happening here. The green box still representing the original size of Nancy, but we have 2 red lines that is indicating this measurement that I gave, that 2.7, is represented by these 2 red lines. The other thing, notice that I chose to scale, and what it did, it changed my name proportionately, both height and width, to fit within this red area. Notice the difference if I use the drop down and choose shrink and preview. When I do a shrink, it only changes the horizontal. The vertical is left the same. Shrink is going to squeeze the letters closer together to fit in your designated area. Now there's times to use one versus the other. If I were embroidering all of these names across from each other, maybe I was doing a block that had all of our members' names and they're across from each other, I would not want my name to be so much smaller, shorter than everybody else's. If I use a scale, my name will definitely be different in height than Nancy or Dory. Okay? So my name would stick out. In that case, I might want to use shrink so that the height of mine is very close to the height of the other ones, but the letters are closer together. However, since we're doing this on a shirt, and I'm only going to wear my shirt and everyone else is going to wear their own, our names are not next to each other, so I might choose to do a scale so that it is more in proportion as long as it fits within the area above that pocket. So you have 2 options. It really just depends on what you're embroidering. Okay, here comes the really cool part. Yes, I can continue to add names, but here's our first group. I'm going to come down here to do a save. I click on save. I don't want to be in my bowling shirts folder, so I'm going to come up a layer, and I'm in my July shortcuts. I'm in the proper folder for this evening. Down here, it wants a file name. Whatever I type in is going to be the name of my folder. So Garden Club Members is the name of the folder. I'll go ahead and do a save. It'll take just a moment to render, and look what Perfect Embroidery Pro just did for us. I'm going to come over here and turn on the large icons. It automatically created a design file, a C2S, for every person in my list, and it created the list of members in a TXT file. I'm going to double click that and it opens up the text file in Notepad. If you have Windows, you have Notepad. And notice how the software put it into a text file. The names are separated by semicolons. Yes, I could add a name here. If I add Tamara's name, I do need to do a file. I'm going to save it so that it's now overwriting the original, and this file now has Tamara's name. What it did is add the name to the text file. What it does not do in this instance is automatically create another design file. I have to go back into PEP and redo that save. But I am allowed to open the text file and add additional names. Let me close that. We're going to come back into PEP. Here in our list, I can actually, I'm going to close out of here because the idea is that first grouping was for our shirts, our denim shirts. But now something's come up and I want to do name tags so that if everybody wants to wear their own clothing, we still have name tags for our group members. But I'm going to add a little fun. We'll come up here to our symbol. I love these little symbols. They're so fun to play with and to add. I'm coming down to flower 3, double click that, and all I need to do is click and drag the size of the flower, and we see again that it comes in grouped. I'm going to position that where I'd like it, and here I have a little bit of embroidery with my name, and the trick to getting this on the name tag with everybody else's is to select both of those items, or all of the items that you want included. Come back into Tools, down to Name Drops, and here my list only has Nancy because she's the one on the screen. All I need to do is come down here to Import. I go to the folder that is holding my Garden Club members. Okay. Here's my text file. Double click on that, and here are all my members with Tamara's name included because I imported the current file. That's pretty cool that we can go get the list and use it over and over again. Now something else is different here. Because we chose to bring this flower in, we have a yellow dot, and this yellow dot right here is representing the alignment that's set over here. You can see that it's set for left center. If I change that to center, and do a preview, we don't really see a big difference with Nancy because her name is the one that set the size of this green box. But watch what happens if I choose Chris and preview. You can see that it is centering it vertically and horizontally, which leaves a gap between our flower and Chris's name. I really don't want that gap. I want that flower to look like it's hooked right on to the person's name. So I am going to use the left align. But look at the difference. If I use top left, then it's going to align it here. The C is in this box. Excuse me. If I use the lower left and preview, you can see it drops it down and aligns it at the bottom, but it is still at left. Now those are your choice, whichever alignment you'd like. But for me, with this flower, I think I like it really back in its original position with the flower right in the middle of the name. And if we need to, we can preview each of the names. And again, here comes my name sticking out of the box and Tamara's name sticking out of the box because our names are larger than Nancy's. So what I probably want to do, these are individual name tags. I'm going to probably have a size for each. So I would do a shrink, and I'm going to come up here and set that name tag is going to be 3 inches wide. And then if I preview, Tamara's name is going to fit nicely. I go back to my name and preview mine, and it's going to, again, squeeze those letters in to fit within that 3. And really, in this kind of situation, you could go ahead and choose scale if that was your preference. There's really no right or wrong on this particular name tag. Once again, the cool part, come down to Save. It wants the name of the folder. I'm going to go back into my Garden Club Members folder and come down here and call this Name Tags. Makes sense to me. It's going to take just a moment to render, brings us back into the folder. If I turn on the preview for large icons, take a look. Once again, it has rendered a file for each of the names in that list with the new list of everyone. It'll always give you a text file, even though you might have one previously. But very cool, automatically giving us a design file for each of those. All right, we're going to come back, and I'm going to close this and open up a file that I have started. We have one more project that we would like to do with our Garden Club members, and it is to create an embroidered napkin. We have a special event coming up, a dinner, and I'd like everyone to have a beautiful napkin at their place setting. So what I have on the screen is a visualization of a 16-inch square napkin on point, and I've used my guidelines so that I can visualize where that letter is going to go. Now, with this in mind, Dime always has cool products, and there is a product that would help out with this particular project. It's the perfect placement. It's a set of templates that are Templar vinyl, and they have a hole in it where you have your crosshairs that you can easily insert a target sticker. Now, I have added these red arrows to show you that on this template they have printed a black line and the center position, and all you need to do is align that black line on the hemline of the napkin, and there you have your perfect placement for whatever it is that you're embroidering on this particular napkin. Very, very easy to do. All right, we'll come back in here, and first thing I'm going to do, we have to have a text box. We know that. I'm going to select that text box, come over here, and set up the look of my napkin. I love this beautiful Magnolia font. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I'll double click. It comes in quite large, and I'm just going to use my arrow key and drag down. I am watching the status bar until I get to be about, what do I want this to be, about 275, I think is what I want it to play with. And yes, about a 275, and if I click on that arrow, yep, that's going to work, and I'll drag it and sort of position it where I think it should be. Now that we have it in there, we can zoom in on this letter so you can see how very pretty it is. I'll turn on my 3D, and just a couple of properties that I'd like to set for this napkin. We're actually going to combine both of those two cool things. We're going to do a text style so that in the future all my napkins will look the same, and we'll also use our members list. I have Magnolia. I want to change the density to a 4. I'll apply that. And then really the only other thing I want to do is come over here to colors. You may notice that there are 4 colors in this particular font. And what normally happens, depending on the thread chart that you like that comes up for your default, it's going to take the first 4 colors. I want to change some of them. I'm going to click on the number 1, which brings up my thread chart, change that to a fun green for our garden club. I like the fuchsia as number 2, but I'll click on number 3 and choose a softer pink for that. And then the number 4, for orange, I'll click and change those colors to a purple. And I think that's a little bit more pleasing for what we're doing with our event. Just to refresh you, we're going to come over here to our ellipse button. We click on that. We're going to save this and call it, I'll just go Garden Club Napkin. Oops. Napkin. Go ahead and OK that. I'll close, so now I can use it in the future. And then let's go back under Tools, Name Drops. Comes into our list. Remember, we only have the letter A on the screen. I didn't bother with putting anybody's name in because we are going to do an import. I'm going to go into our name tags, which was our last text file used. There's Tamara's name. Everybody's there. I could even go in and add, if I have a brand new member, I could add that member. And everything about this is fine. I don't have to worry about the max text in the fit because we're only talking about one letter. Again, the cool thing, we're going to do our save. I'm going to go into the proper folder and name my folder Napkins. I could call it Event Napkin, whatever made sense to us. We'll do a save. It'll take just a moment to render because that letter is quite intricate and some colors. Not to worry here. This is going to come up. It is responding, but it'll take just a moment. down the road here I'm going to get a new computer with a bigger graphics card, so none of that will happen again. But what we have here is to come over and use our large icons, and look what it did for us. Everybody's name, full-blown first name, was in that list, but because it was only one letter in the style, it took everyone's first initial and made a design file for each of them, in addition to giving us a new text file with Eileen's name added. That is very, very fun. When you talk about shortcuts, this is great. Now, one final thing. These are all C2S files. I need a PES file for my machine format. So we'll come back into Perfect Embroidery Pro. I'm going to close, and it's okay if I'm on this screen. It doesn't matter. Let's come back up to Tools, come down to Batch Conversion. It wants to know the source folder. I'm going to select my Napkins folder. Show those icons so you see what I'm doing. I'm going to select N, hold down my Shift key through E, so I'm picking all the design files. Go ahead and do an open. It put the destination folder as the exact same folder. I like that. That's logical. But I do want to change my format. I'm going to drag up to a PES 8 and do a start. In a blink, it already took care of all of those files. Let's go back and take a look. Oops, wrong one. I want to go to my napkins. That's what I get for having two ends. And now if I look at my large icons, I have my machine file for each one of those by doing that batch conversion. I just think that is very, very fun. All right, I'll take a breath here now. I don't normally yak this long, but I wanted to make sure you saw the whole process. Dory, what's up?
Well, first of all, may I say congratulations to Jan Bolin. She came up with a very fun and very useful, my personal favorite, shortcut. It is the Ctrl Z.
Yes, it is. And we'll show you very quickly what she's talking about. We'll come back into my Apple. And if I had moved my seeds to the wrong apple and I can't see them, if I do a Control and the letter Z, that is the same thing as if we came up here and did our undo key. I love it. Thanks, Jan.
Yes. Now, can you show one more time, please, how you get the catalog again?
How you see what actually was created?
No,
Is that what you mean?
Yes, I believe it's the library, and this would be a Nancy question. Our friend Nancy. There you go.
In our library, these are all of the folders. Now, I own all of the Dime software. I'm very lucky to do that. And so you see the different folders. If you only own Perfect Embroidery Pro at the moment, then you would only see this file name. If I click on that, and let me drag this up here a little bit so you can see better. We have a window here that we could control the size of the area down here for display. But if I click on that, you can either use your scroll bar and go looking for the design that you want to find, or if I right-click down here in the display and ask it to show contents, it's going to bring me into all of those designs that are here in Perfect Embroidery Pro. Let me direct your attention up to this area. Here's the path that you follow. C:, which is your hard drive, Dime folder, Designs folder, and Perfect Embroidery Pro. If I were to expand, you'd see it right here. Here's Dime. Here's Dime, Designs. I'll expand that, and you see Perfect Embroidery Pro chosen. So that's how we get that. Now, a little aside, The fact that I see all of my images is because I also have installed Perfect Stitch Viewer, which is the software right here. So that is allowing me to see all of my designs that are here. It's also what let me see all of my napkins and so forth as they were created.
Super. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, we have one other thing. I'll return to Perfect Embroidery Pro, coming up with a clean screen. If we are talking about shortcuts, we must talk about the ultimate one when using all of your software to its fullest. I direct your attention over here to the rightmost of my screen where you see all of these icons. These give us easy access to the other software that you own while you're in Perfect Embroidery Pro. If you are in WordArt, you're not going to see these objects or these icons. You'll see them when you're in Perfect Embroidery Pro. And you must have a registered copy of the software for them to be showing like this. If you have a registered copy and you don't see your additional software, you're going to want to contact the support desk and they'll get you fixed up. Now, let's take a look at why this is so wonderful and indeed a shortcut. I'm going to start up here with Stitched Snapshots, and it automatically brings me into this software. Please remember, I'm in Perfect Embroidery Pro, but it allowed me to go right into Stitched Snapshots. I'm going to choose Browse, double-click this adorable little puppy. I'm going to do a couple of property changes here. Change a couple things that will give us a very nice option. Here's our little guy. We're going to do a show hide, and he might not look like much here. I know I want to do one other thing here. Let me adjust all this lightness, and now I'm going to show hide, and his eye will show up just a little bit better. I'm going to bring him to screen and back this out. There he is, and I'll turn on our 3D. Okay, this is very fun, Stitched Snapshots. Some of you might own that at the moment. But now I'm going to come back over to my Easy Access, go into WordArt, into the bubble text, go into my shapes, down to objects, into frames, and double-click the scallop. A couple of changes here. I'm going to type in some words that I'd like for my puppy, Sammy. I'm going to tell Sammy to sit, but I'm also going to tell Sammy that he's a good boy. Now, here is a change, and this came with the latest upgrade. We asked for it, and we were given the ability to keep two words together. Do you see where I have that tilde? That's going to keep the words good boy together as one phrase. I'm going to change the colors that would look better with my pup, and then I'll go ahead and do the apply. Now, that tilde, if you look at your keyboard at the numbers up at the top of your keyboard, look to the left of the number 1, and it is the shift of that key. It's called a tilde, and that will allow our phrase good boy to stay together. You see it right here. We've got it here, here, couple places in here, but that's a wonderful addition to our WordArt. Okay, I like the way it looks. I'm going to do an OK, come back to the screen, and take a look how darling that is. I have used 2 of my other software. I am still in Perfect Embroidery Pro. I can combine these 2 items without having to save the files and merge them into Perfect Embroidery Pro. I also could now go in and do a color sort. I could change fonts. I could add additional words. I could put even a little bit more decoration around my puppy. But the idea is with these easy access, I could even go into Quilt Embellisher. my block piecer, certainly my quilt planner, whatever I needed to do here while in Perfect Embroidery Pro, I can. And once again, it's because Perfect Embroidery Pro is the control software. Okay, it's like the parent software that's allowing all of these others to work within. Something else to notice, you have arrows at the bottom of each of, or most of these icons, and if I were to click on that arrow, notice that I can also access the ink spots that are in WordArt. So if I wanted to add some little fun doodahs to this additional frame and really gaudy it up just a little bit, I certainly could do that, and I could copy paste and position those all the way around. If you use the arrow for your quilt, you have all of these options here. If I go into my block piecer, I only have a couple because I don't have what needs to be selected first to reorder. But the idea is if you had a couple blocks or a couple things going on here, you certainly could play with that. And then, of course, with the quilt planner, you can do the items here. Again, I have nothing selected, so some of these are grayed out. But it's just a great shortcut to be able to access all of your software while in Perfect Embroidery Pro. All right, Dory, do we have any final questions?
No, we do not, and we're just about out of time, but thank you so much.
And I thank everybody for joining me tonight, and hope to see you next month when we cover the Auto Digitizing Wizard. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your great shortcut ideas as well. Good night.
Thank you.